Hi guys! Today I am going to talk to you a little bit about annotating books, which is a very touchy subject. Some people are very much strongly for annotating books, some people are very against annotating books. And today I'm going to get into a little bit of what I think, as well as give you a little insight on that, which is a little bit of a spoiler, but we're going to go with it. So if that's something that interests you, just stay tuned. Let's get serious on this and talk about whether or not we write in our books, because that is something that I want to talk to you guys about, because I've recently had a change of heart. I used to be the biggest believer of not writing my books. I did not want to mark them up. I wanted to keep them in pristine. I hated breaking the spines. I wanted to keep them in as pristine, brand new condition as possible. I loved seeing them sitting so pretty on my bookshelf and not having a single dent or scratch or anything on them. And for a long time, I just didn't like doing that. If there was something that I wanted to remember in the book, I would make note of it somewhere else. I could write it in a notebook. And then as I grew older, I stopped carrying around the notebook, and I read the book, I enjoyed the book, I devoured the book. I didn't retain the book. I would remember certain things about it, but nothing in particular really stuck out. Even if I absolutely loved the story, I wasn't retaining it. And that when it came up later and I wanted to recall a specific quote, I had a hard time recalling exactly where in the book it was. And that made me sad, because I felt like while I was reading and loving the book, I wasn't, no matter how much I loved it, I personally, for me, was not retaining it and keeping it that alive in me in a way that I felt did justice for the author, for the book, for the story, and just for myself. And it took me just recently, I would say within the past 3 to 6 months, for me to really start thinking about marking my books. I used to. In school, I was the page. I had my pages marked. I bent them, earmarked my books. I wrote in them all through school, high school, the bit of college. And then I just got into this thing where I just liked seeing them pretty on my shelf. I would read them, but I wouldn't really read them, like interact with the books. And then I watched a video on YouTube from a YouTuber who's in the book community. And she said something that really, she had linked an article, and I'll share it, she linked an article in her description of her video about marking a book. And that article really just reminded me why I needed to start marking books. And I knew that I was going to do it soon. I was getting ready to begin the real-time reading of A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness, which is a book that is so near and dear to my heart. I have never, in a book since the Harry Potter series, I had not had a main character that I just really resonated on all levels with until A Discovery of Witches. And it was incredible. And I read the story so fast the first time around, and I retained everything, but I couldn't, there were like specific things that I was like, oh yeah, remember that? And I couldn't remember exactly where in the storyline and where they'd all happened. So, I determined that when I started the real-time reading, that was when I was going to make a change and start underlining and highlighting and going through my books and really marking them up and cherishing them and loving them. So I put that first mark in my book. I underlined a sentence, and I never looked back. I was so scared to make that underline, to make it, even though this is a book that I love and I cherish, and I have 2 copies of every book in the trilogy. 2 copies of every book. So it's not, I have my pristine on the shelf, like signed by the author books. And then I have my copy that is, the spine is broken, and I will show it to you. The spine is broken. There are things underlined all throughout. I've written in the margins my just really loved book, and I can go back at any point in time and I can say that line, this line, and read the quote verbatim. It's marked in my book. And what makes it interesting is next year when I go back, I can go in with another color or a highlighter and reread and look at what new things pop out at me and look at, is it the same, is it different? I can keep going back and underlining, highlighting, rediscovering these things that I loved. Now, I don't annotate every book that I read, and I will give examples of when I do and when I don't. I do not annotate every book that I read. Some books I don't. Some books I like just reading on the surface level and just reading through them, loving them for what they are, and moving on. Other books, for one reason or another, they really just resonate in me, and I just want to devour them. I want to soak them all up. I want to break the spine. I want to feel the reading in my hands, and that is such a big thing for me. I love being able to take my pen and write in a book, and it just, something about it just changes the feeling of the book in my hands. I don't even know how to explain that. I'm probably making this sound really creepy and weird, and I promise you I'm not creepy, I'm not weird, I'm not strange. I made that first underline and I've never looked back. I loved it, and I love actually marking up my books now. So I'm going to give you some examples of how I annotate my books, so what I do to them. Some of them look a little worse for wear, and I love that because to me it just shows that it's a well-loved book, and one you'll see in particular what I'm talking about by a little beat-up, well-loved book. But I'm going to go into a little bit of how I annotate, what I do. There isn't a full rhyme or reason about it, but I just want to share, since this has been a very recent but fast-paced switch. So I'm going to grab some annotated books and I'll get into that. I'm going to get into the different ways that I've annotated these because you can see there's just a couple different things that I've done. I'll start with the Discovery of Witches. This is the first book that I annotated. This is a well-loved book, and I'll throw in some close-ups here for you. This book is, it's underlined, it's got tabs in it, it has tabs up the wazoo at the top, tabs in the side. This book I just marked in anything that really just spoke to me. So, things where I really just resonated with the character, items that, like right here, character has an internal monologue, and she says, "The smell of the library always lifted my spirits. That particular combination of old stone, dust, woodworm, and paper made properly from rags." Things like that just really just resonated with me. Items, where, see in here, where I've marked yes. What's fantastic about this, I put hearts in the margin, and things like this are just really, that's where I really underline major points. I do and I don't. It depends on the book. This one, this time around the real-time read, I kind of focused on, and I'll get into the real-time read another time, and what that is and what that entailed. I focused on the characters, because there is a great plot and it's a fantastic story, but like I said, I resonated so much to the main character, to Diana in the story. She is like my heart. I resonated with her, and like I said, I've never resonated with a character like this in a long time, and never to this level at this stage of my life. So This is another, it's just well loved. It just falls perfectly flat because I've read through this so many times. I don't think you can actually break the spine on this one, but there's definitely a crease in the spine from this one. So this one is just one example. Here's another book, and this one is actually, I'm gonna put in quite because this is quite the connection, and this one is a little bit different. You'll see a lot of tabs. Rose Under Fire, I keep going back and forth with doing a full book review. I read this book so long ago now, not so long ago, but long enough now that I'm not sure if I'm going to write a full book review on it. But there is a lot of poetry. I wasn't really, I mean, I like poetry. I'm not a huge poetry fan, but there is a lot of poetry in this book, and so these tabs, some of them are for poems. Like this is a poem right here that I marked out that I wanted to, because the poems just made this book. So that's what these tabs are. When something atrocious happens to our character, and this was the first book after A Discovery of Witches that I really, like, I did whatever I wanted with this book. It, you know, was breaking the spine, breaking the front spine, the back spine, underlining out the wazoo. I just really, I went to town with this book, and that was the most freeing thing, was to just go to town and take a book that I've loved so much and be able to mark that up as I read along, and then take a book that I've never read before, and just really, like, you can see how much I loved this book and how well loved it is, and how much I really got out of the story just by looking at it, let alone when you open it up and you see passages and passages underlined. That is what is one of the best things. That is why I started really annotating. I got so much more out of this book when I started marking it up and knowing exactly what section that I liked. You know, it's nice to be able to know exactly what it is that I loved about this book, and what I can just open to a page and see that. And the final one, and this is one that I'm going to use in an example here because I just stumbled. This is another, but there's no tabs in this whatsoever. No tabs. I have no interest in tabbing it. This one is one I just underlined and highlighted. That was all I did. Things that were beautifully written, things that I resonated with the character, items like that. And this whole book is not annotated. There's definitely a lot more in the beginning when she's really getting into the characters and the character development and letting us know who we are. So there's a lot more in the beginning of this book. But the nice thing about this too, some people think that by writing in a book maybe sets you up, you have to hold on to that book forever. Nobody else wants to read your notes. Nobody wants to, you know, kind of have that detracting, I guess, from their reading experience, which may be true. You may have someone who just hates annotating books, is very against it, feels like that is just not their place to do and it's not what they want to do. But I will say I would love to do like a sharing book where it starts with one person and they underline and they put their thoughts in it, and they, you know, really what stands out to them, and then I can read it and I can mark down what my thoughts are and what stands out to me. And it's nice because in a way it's like having a conversation with that person. You're having a conversation with the characters in the book by underlining and writing in little bits of what's going through your mind. And you're also having a conversation with any other readers because they see what you're picking up and what is meaningful to you and what little cues that you're picking up on, and they're picking up on different cues, and it just creates a wonderful reading experience. And that is what I love. I love talking books. I love talking reading. I love obviously talking tea and everything else, but books in particular, such a dialogue. And if you're not able to do it in person with someone, why not share a book? Do some underlining. Get a book, do some underlining that you're both interested in reading, and do some underlining and share it. And then once it's done, you have both people's thoughts and you have an idea of what both people thought of it. And that it's a whole new way to share a book and have a new reading experience. And that is cool. I'm just gonna put it that way. It's cool. So I'm gonna show you just a little bit of like what I annotate in these books and what I underlined and how I did it. This book is the only book that I've highlighted so far. Highlighting is a realm that I'm just starting into. I normally just underline, but there are times that I want something to stand out on a page a little bit more, so I'm going to start highlighting more as I go in because, for example, I have a big passage. Yes, you can cry because I'm bending pages back in my book, but I love reading like this. It's my favorite. But for example, there's a big passageway right here, and I love the entire passage. And the thing that I want to remember about this whole passage is the very last sentence. It says, "It is a kind of magic." This is all talking about, reading and people leaving their lifetimes and their thoughts and their memories on paper, and other people being able to read them and understand them and have life from somebody else's point of view. And it is a kind of magic, and it's not something that you think about until it's right there on a page in front of me. And I want to remember that if I ever open this book again, which I probably will, because I'll do a book talk on this book. So there you have it. First of all, you saw me highlight my book for the first time ever. It was fantastic. I even drew a little heart in there because I loved that so much. But you saw how I annotated all of my books. I hope you enjoyed this, and please, let's have a discussion. Do you annotate your books? Do you not? Why do you or why do you not? Let me know.